Good evening and welcome to the first meeting of 2024 Cascade Locks Port Commission. So we'll do a roll call since we can't do a Pledge of Allegiance.
President Lorraine,
Here.
Vice President Clute,
Here.
Commissioner Nance,
I'm expecting Commissioner Nance. He may just be a little bit late getting on. He didn't mention that, but with this weather and these conditions, I think that we can give everybody just a little minute here.
Commissioner Peterson, I'm just admitting him now.
Are we ready to move on? Or we're waiting?
And then Commissioner Tweet.
Here.
Commissioner Peterson, we were just doing roll call.
Here.
And then Commissioner Nance just got admitted. Commissioner Nance, we're doing roll call.
Here.
Perfect, thank you.
Fantastic. We're all present and accounted for. Modifications, additions, and changes to the agenda, please.
I do have an addition and a change. My apologies to the audience. I'm going to move, would like to request to move the executive session 6A directly next in the agenda. So above number 2, approve, or excuse me, what one was executive? I'm looking at the wrong one.
Not executive director report, you mean executive session, right?
That's right. Thank you. That's correct.
Okay.
Legal counsel regarding litigation likely. I'd also like to add executive session B, discussion of exempt public records.
Okay, perfect. Then we'll give everybody a second to exit or to be put on hold while our meeting is taking place.
And if you want to do that announcement, Brad, while we're still recording, that would be great.
Yes, we'll do that as soon as I find it. Here we go. Get my glasses on. This is small print. Port of Cascade Locks Commission will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 1926602F and 2H, which allows Commission to meet in executive session to consider information on records that are exempt by law from public inspection and to consult with legal counsel regarding pending litigation. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session to welcome the audience back into the room.
Can we give the group just kind of an estimate of how long we'll be, just so that they know?
I mean, I think that's somewhat dependent on the questions that you guys ask. I would guess less than a half an hour.
Okay.
Okay, great. Alrighty, so we'll
give Carrie Ann a check and to put everybody into the waiting room. I believe Philip, Flora, and I think Laura. Laura's with is Laura part of the media? Okay. I think that's everybody, yes? Looks good.
Who
Okay,
is R Downs?
say again.
Who is R Downs?
Ron is with SDAO. He's going to make this presentation in executive session.
Okay, got it.
Ron, good to see you. We're going to go ahead and start with you and get you underway. I think this is the easier of the two, so.
Okay. So thank you for having on a run.
Ouch.
It was harrowing, but I miraculously am fine.
Tommy, are you sticking around?
Yeah, I assume you want me to if you don't want me to.
At least through. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, let us know when everybody's back in.
It looks like we're good.
Okay. Let's see, what's next on the agenda? We got public comment. We have anybody on there that wants to comment? You have your sound turned off.
Sorry.
No.
At the moment, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll move along. Special presentations. Flex 6 update and Medenbach.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ann.
Hi. Yeah, so just a quick update on Flex 6. If you guys remember, we had a 6-month listing agreement for the building. So that listing agreement is coming up February 28th. So we've been holding steady pretty much through the whole time. We had a spike in interest in the first part of the listing, and we've pretty much held steady since that time with a few small fluctuations. But really what's happening is it looks like we're having a lot of views from regional and local folks, and some interest, but pretty limited once they see where it is. I have talked to another number of brokers directly who have advertised need for a space this size and of this type. And all of them have responded that they need to be closer to I-5. So it looks like the majority of the users who are this size are right
Lost
now.
your sound.
Oh, can you still hear me?
There you go.
Okay. So it looks like the majority of users right now at this size are wanting to be closer to the metro area and distribution-based businesses or recreation. So lots of pickleball type courts or specialty uses, very little production interest, which I found interesting. The client or potential tenant that was in the aerospace industry has since disappeared. So I haven't heard much back from them, even though I have continued to follow up. So again, we continue to see interest, but no local or regional player has emerged. So we're continuing on with marketing. I continue to pitch it directly to brokers, and that's where we are today. Any questions?
Any of them made comment on the size of the space, and if it was a smaller space, then they might be more, no, not so much about the space, but location. Okay.
Yep.
Have there been a lot of, at least people going and checking it out, anything that was more of a potential positive lead, or is it just crickets?
It's honestly kind of just crickets, and I follow up on every sort of, potential that looks like it is a real lead on all the sites. And again, the other venues that I'm using with brokers, I've invited brokers out to lunch, like, hey, it's not that far, come and see, like we're really only a half hour out of Troutdale, come and take a look. But yeah, location has been the number one issue so far.
Okay. And you said the our agreement with you will technically be over February 28th?
Yes.
Okay.
And we started that September 1st.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for the update.
Yeah, you're welcome. Stay warm out there.
Thank you, Ann. You too. I'll just take a quick second here as the storm starts to turn up outside. I keep hearing it more and more. If we do lose power and the meeting ends, we're not going to attempt to reconvene it based somewhat on the experience we had this weekend, where it went on for 10 minutes and then off for an hour and on for 10 minutes. So we will come back to this meeting at a future date if we were to lose power during it.
Okay. Next, Sternwheeler update. Jim Andrews from Jetty Light.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner and members of the board and the public of Cascade Locks. First of all, mic test, want to make sure that you can hear me.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. While it's my pleasure to be back in Cascade Locks, I had a little bit more of a somber duty as we reported back on Saturday. Most folks may be aware that we suffered a marine casualty in the unprecedented weather that Cascade Locks experienced on Friday night into Saturday. And what I would like to do, if the board concurs, is to walk you through probably a dozen slides from an investigation that I have performed in concert with the port director, Jeremiah Blue, to try to piece together exactly what happened, to figure out what the causative effects of the mishap were, and to put into place protections to make sure something similar doesn't happen in the future. So with that,
Jim, just real quick before we present that, we were so rushed when the contract was put in place. Can you give us just your quick background on your work in the marine world?
Oh, yeah, I sure will. For probably my entire adult life, I've been doing something related to the sea. I graduated from high school and went directly to the Coast Guard Academy, where I graduated and went into the fleet. I sailed for 4 consecutive years, 2 on a buoy tender, so positioning buoys and aids to navigation, a lot of precise navigation work. And then I spent 2 years as the second in command of a 140-foot ice-breaking harbor tug up in Rockland, Maine. So we got some Maine-like weather out here today here in Cascade Locks. Had a lot of that breaking ice. Proceeded in my career. Coast Guard sent me to graduate school to get a master's degree in oceanography. And then I had an opportunity to fly with the International Ice Patrol to keep the transatlantic shipping lanes free of icebergs, or at least let the shipping lanes know where the icebergs were. From there, I did a couple of tours in headquarters. I also did a couple more tours back at sea. Went back to Maine for 3 more years to do some more ice breaking. Had a chance to go down to Key West, Florida to do some counter drug enforcements down in the Caribbean, and ended my career in Galveston, Texas as the captain of a 210-foot ship named the Dauntless. Retired from the Dauntless, stayed in Galveston, went directly to work in the commercial maritime industry. I was the director of safety and the director of personnel for a harbor tug company in Texas. And a lot of what I did is similar to what we had the chance to do here this weekend, investigating mishaps and trying to figure out what happened and find out what we can do to make sure that those sorts of things don't happen again. From there, I left the towing company. I went and got a master's of business administration degree using benefits, and went back into the harbor tug industry as the president of a company doing harbor tug operations in Lake Charles, Louisiana. From there, I returned back to Galveston and worked for a state pilot association as their business manager, and started Jetty Light right around the same time. Jetty Light is a LLC, single member LLC. Traditionally started with a lot of the same things like safety management system consulting, vessel operations consulting. We worked with some line boat companies, worked with the Coast Guard quite a bit, did some maritime consulting for NASA for their recovery of some of the manned space capsules that they were testing in the Gulf. I did some marine education type stuff, consulting, and then to vessel chartering.
Is anyone else losing
Which is
audio?
Yeah, Jim, your audio is chopping out.
in
Perhaps could other people go off of video? Perhaps that'll save a little bit of bandwidth.
There we go.
Thank you.
contact with Matt Miller from HMS. Worked together since then, and Matt Locks. And okay, yeah, I my video help. Probably tired of looking at my face anyway. At all? Yeah, I'm just on Wi-Fi here, so I don't. I do.
You might drop it to Carrie Ann real quick in case we need to move you upstairs.
Okay, I will send it to you right now. That's, I think, is everyone still there? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No. Oh, you can't. Okay.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
That's really
Still breaking up.
the summary of my experience. We put a bid right the stern wheeler for y'all, and we're very thankful and humbled that you gave us the opportunity, and we've been doing that since late July. Jeremiah asked if I could send my slide deck to him just in case I get dropped. So I'd like to do that briefly.
I have it on my laptop here if you haven't made any changes, and I could share screen if that helps.
Okay, thanks, Genevieve. I'm going to try to share screen right now and see what happens.
Okay.
Oh, I'm disabled from doing so.
You should be
So what?
Now.
Okay. Let me try now. Okay, can you see what I'm sharing here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And if someone could just call out if my audio starts chopping up, I won't know it on my end, but I can slow down and go back if need be. I just want to say a couple of things.
We lost you, Jim.
Ron.
Breaking up.
That
we've lost you, Jim. We can't hear you at all.
What I've seen from our education, I think we were very fortunate.
Jim, we've lost you. We can't hear you.
Okay, I'm going to maybe.
If you're with Jeremiah at the port, perhaps you can go into his room and
Yeah,
work together?
Can you hear me now?
Just give us about 90 seconds here, guys. We'll
Got it.
We'll get
You
this
got it.
rectified.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
What we'll do is we'll put you on mute on there, so mute yourself.
Yeah, I'm closed here.
Bet you're not. No, you're not. So hit mute. So Jim's in my office now. He's going to shoot over to this screen, and he'll be sitting in front of this computer and running it off there. Go ahead, sit over here. Okay. And then you can run your slideshow off of here, and I'll just sit off screen. Thanks. Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you again. Apologies for the technology. As I was saying, I think we got very fortunate with some lucky breaks. Probably, if things hadn't gone our way, I think it's safe to say that we could have lost the sternwheeler. I'm happy that did not happen, as I think everyone here is, but it gives us an opportunity to learn from those lessons. I'd like to commend the crew, in particular, Captain Tom Cramblett and George Torres. They performed exceptionally well. They did things immediately and instantly to mitigate the possible additional damage to the vessel, and they endured very challenging conditions to move the sternwheeler to safety. The crew and the vessel experienced some very severe conditions, and fortunately, they are all well versed in the regional conditions and the behavior of the vessel, which really helped our team out. As I mentioned, the weather event exceeded expectations and I think bordered on extreme conditions. And I'm very thankful for their cooperation, assistance, and the support of the port, the fire department, local safety entities, Hood River County Sheriffs, and many others who helped us get the sternwheeler back to safety. What I want to do is just provide a brief narrative of the event. First things first, the weather. I think the weather was the primary cause of the mishap that we experienced. The forecast was pretty variable and difficult to pin down. As you can see, it was the models were contradicting each other. Maybe it would freeze, maybe it wouldn't. There wasn't a lot of discussion of gale force winds. It was more about possible blizzard and possible snow or ice. As we got into the 13th of January, the weather we were planning for was 35 knots of west wind shifting to 35 knots of east wind. Accordingly, as the crew has experience with this, We came in, boarded the vessel, which was moored in a bow downriver configuration, got underway and moored her up with the bow into the east wind because she'll ride better in those conditions. Remoored her, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically about the mooring arrangement, which is how the lines tie the vessel to the dock. And we're not exactly sure how strong the winds were, but we're pretty sure that the winds were east over 50 knots for a good portion of the morning, and perhaps gusting to as high as 80 knots, which is that's hurricane force winds. And some of this is a little small, so I'll read it pretty quickly just so you can gain an impression. On the morning of January 13th, Todd Moore, a port employee, reported that the sternwheeler was moored at the sternwheeler mooring. No indication of if the mooring was failing. I don't know if he got close enough to see that, but that gives us a starting point for, we know the vessel was alongside at 7:30 in the morning. The next data point we have is that at 8:16 local, Margie Curtis, a local resident, looked out her window overlooking the marina and reported that the sternwheeler was moving broadside away from her berth and down river into the locks. Jeremiah and I had an opportunity to interview her and ask her some questions about what she saw. And she indicated that the vessel was bowed to the Washington side, stern to the Oregon side, moving downwind, and apparently right down the middle of the locks. And as far as she could see, the vessel didn't touch the lock wall, at least until it got well into the locks. So that helps us understand what her orientation was as she was drifting downward, and it gives us a little bit of an understanding about what might have happened to the mooring system. Again, moving forward, she called the sheriff's office. Sheriff's office called Cascade Locks Fire Chief and Captain Tom Cramblett, notifying them of the situation. Captain Tom called crew member Stephen Hamrick, and the sheriff's office also then got in touch with Jeremiah at about 8:30 in the morning. Nikki Adler, who is Stephen Hamrick's wife and also a member of the crew, called George Torres, who lives locally, and asked him if he could get down to the boat and try to assist. Meantime, Captain Tom also headed down to the boat to see what the situation was and try to assist. And at the time that they arrived, shortly after 8:30, the sternwheeler was in the locks. The paddle wheel was under the pedestrian bridge, and the bow was pointed roughly up river at a sort of a north-northeast orientation. I also wanted to mention that one of two Native American fishing platforms on the mainland side of the locks was damaged, and it was the westernmost of those two platforms. And they give us a little indication about how the vessel got into the orientation that she was in. And I just want to say at this point, I think it's likely that that platform helped the vessel get into the orientation that she did, which preserved the paddle wheel from being damaged. So although I'm quite upset and sorrowful for the effect of their livelihood, I am appreciative that the platform helped the vessel get oriented so that we could drive her out of there. Okay, let me see if I can get this to, there we go. So at about 9:10 local, George Torres arrived to the vessel at the pedestrian bridge and was able to board her by way of the O2 deck aft. So the O2 deck is the deck that's on the top of the vessel that's open to the sky, before you get to the pilot house, which is enclosed. He was able to climb on the aft corner and walk into the vessel. Captain Tom Cramlett arrived shortly thereafter and boarded in the same way. And once Tom and George were on the vessel, they were able to take a quick safety scan and then start the engines and get the propulsion system into line. Stephen Hamrick, our chief engineer, was driving from Washougal. It was about a 40-minute drive with the local conditions. And eventually, Captain Tom made the decision to get underway from that position rather than wait for Stephen to drive immediately out to prevent any further damage to the pedestrian bridge. As I mentioned, George and Captain Tom fired up the engineering plant, tested all systems. Propulsion and steering appeared operational. It didn't appear to be any damage to the paddle wheel itself. And there were no obvious breaches in the hull. So we were fairly confident that we were not flooding at that point, but really the immediate need was to get away from the bridge. Had we stayed there, hard to say for how much longer, certainly not more than an hour, the vessel would have continued to slide the pedestrian bridge westward until the mainland side or the port side of the bridge was no longer supported, at which point the entire bridge would fall down onto the paddle wheel of the sternwheeler. The bridge would probably be destroyed and lost, and very likely the sternwheeler would be destroyed and lost as well, potentially putting the life and health of George and Captain Tom at jeopardy. So as I mentioned, Jeremiah Blue noted that the pedestrian bridge was being dislodged, and he indicated to Tom that he should try to drive the vessel away from the bridge. Captain Tom did that, and fortunately for us, he was able to get away from the bridge and out into the gorge. From there, Captain Tom and George made 2 approaches on the sternwheeler dock in exceedingly heavy winds and seas. The captain determined that a safe mooring could not be performed due to the prevailing conditions and navigated downriver towards Bonneville Locks. Jetty Light and the Port of Cascade Locks sought mooring of refuge at Bradford Island, and the Army Corps at Bonneville Locks proposed instead to lock the vessel through and put her at the downriver mooring. Stephen Hamrick was able to climb aboard the vessel while she was in the lock and lock through with the vessel. And with the 3 crew members safely aboard, we were able to do a much more thorough safety inspection of the bilge and underwater area and confirm that there was no water coming into the vessel. From there, we safely moored at the Bonneville Locks downstream location and took a deep breath and figured out our next plan of action. While moored there at Bonneville Locks, the winds were forecast to elevate with gusts over 40 knots. Additionally, the vessel had no potable water due to having emptied and accessed the potable water tank for corrosion prior to a scheduled shipyard period that was due to begin on February 18th. The vessel had about 4 feet of fuel in the fuel tank, which equates to about 6.9 days of operating on one generator or 3.4 days of operating on both generators. So this gave us our operating parameters of how far we could go and how much we could ask the vessel to do. The engineer noted an oil leak on the port engine's oil pump during the transit to the alternate mooring. And ultimately, the Coast Guard issued operating restrictions on a Coast Guard 835 requiring an immediate dry docking for underwater hull inspection. I want to see if this slide shows up for you. Hopefully it does. Can you see the text on that slide?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So I'm sure for all the Cascade Locks residents, this overview looks very familiar to you. You can see the sternwheeler at the top center of that picture. She's actually moored in the bow down location or bow down configuration here for a west wind. At the time of this mishap, she was moored the opposite way, starboard side to the dock with the bow upriver. And just in terms of understanding the geography and the dimensions, she was about 535 feet away from the far corner of Thunder Island, the upstream entrance to the locks. That opening is about 350 feet wide, and it's about 1,000 feet from the threshold or the entrance of the locks on the upriver side to the pedestrian bridge. If you look to the lower right, you can see a little bit of a close-up of the dimensions near the bridge. You can see that the width of the locks at that point is 160 feet. Fortunately for us, slightly larger than the sternwheeler, so we did not get pinned in a broadside situation in the locks, and that would have been all we could do. There would be no way to get out of there without a tug, and likely not until the wind and current died down. I'm fairly certain that had we ended up in that orientation, the sternwheeler would have suffered very extensive damage. I wanted to also measure from the western side of the lock to where the actual lock entrance itself is, what that dimension was. That's about 120 feet. And that's important because we know that the vessel ended up bow out with the paddle under the pedestrian bridge. And that's important because in pretty much any other configuration except that, I think it would have been exceedingly difficult for Captain Tom to drive the vessel out of the lock the way he did. As I mentioned, this is probably one of the biggest lucky breaks we got. And then finally, the entrance lock wall to lock wall is 88 feet. I just was wondering, you know, as I said, if we got the vessel broadside pinned against that opening, we would have had no option to get the vessel away from that position. So this next slide shows you what I think is the breakaway sequence. See if it comes up here. All right, in this slide, what I'm showing you is from the top at 0730, where we know she's moored, to the report at 0816, where she was drifting broadside with the bow to the Washington side. We know she drifted right down the middle of the locks because the eyewitness reported that. And then we know she must have at some point touched on the Thunder Island side of the wall to get herself into the configuration that she was in when we found her at 0910. I've shown what I think the winds are based on how the flags were flying when she was in her stuck position at the bridge. We anticipate that the winds at this point were easily 40 knots and gusting to 80. It's honestly some of the strongest winds that I've ever been in, short of a hurricane. And there's no doubt that the wind changes dramatically depending on where you are in the gorge, with the position of being right in the middle of the pedestrian bridge, probably the strongest place where the winds pass through. That morning that I got into Cascade Locks, I walked from Bridgeside down to the Marine Park and to the bridge, and the wind was negligible at Bridgeside, and it was still blowing over 50 knots when I got to the bridge. So just gives you an impression of how the perception of the wind changes depending on where you are. Not too much left here. This slide depicts essentially how the vessel was positioned. You can see that she's pointing almost due north, although it doesn't look it in this depiction because I don't have the graphic skills for it, but the stern wheel itself was actually fit almost perfectly under the bridge with the water level the way it was. And the stern wheeler fit almost like a puzzle piece where the top deck was over the span of the pedestrian bridge and the next deck below was under it. So that the primary damage that the stern wheeler suffered was only to the superstructure. We've lost 2 stanchions on that port aft quarter. I know we've got some scuffing and metal scratches on the port side that we haven't really been able to assess yet because we just haven't had the weather and the opportunity to look at it. But again, being in this position here, Captain Tom was able to get her off of that location and drive her straight out. I have some pictures that I wasn't able to add to the slide deck yet, but they show a little bit of how she got into that position, bouncing off the fender that's on the mainland side of the lock, and then just sliding into this position and then getting her corner caught under the pedestrian bridge. Real briefly, I'll show one more slide and then try to answer some of your questions. I just want to show you roughly what the mooring arrangement looked like. In this graphical depiction, the stern wheeler is the large oblong object to the left. The black circles are the mooring dolphins, with the upriver one being at the top and the lower downriver one being at the bottom. The square is labeled gangway, and we have some mooring points at the corners of the gangway. And so I'd like to walk you from the bow, which is the front of the vessel, to the stern, and just identify each one of the mooring lines and what we know about that mooring line, because this is what caused the vessel to leave. It wasn't that the lines weren't made up correctly. They were made up correctly. They just simply parted under force. So starting from the bow or the top of the vessel, the first line you have is the headline, which is a 3-inch braided nylon line. We don't actually know how old this line is, but it's exceedingly old. If it weren't for this incident, I would recommend that we be changing that anyway. Obviously, not a problem because it parted, so we will have to replace it. But it's one of those things, we've always had it. It's our biggest line, and we use it for keeping the bow close to that mooring dolphin. We typically take it in through the chock, take it to the windlass, which is a power apparatus that we have in the bow of the boat. We wrap it around, and then we turn that winch, and it cranks the vessel in towards the mooring dolphin. Moving aft from that, the next thing we had was a security line, which is a 1.5-inch braided nylon line. It was not used for mooring strength. It was used for a security line to keep people from moving too far to the bow, and also to give the linemen a handhold while they're out there. It did part. It was providing a little bit of stability, but it wasn't there for mooring strength. It was really there for safety. The next line after that was the breast line, and this is a soft line, 1.5-inch braided nylon. We know this line was about 1 to 3 years old. It was in fairly good condition. And it was doubled up with a galvanized chain, which is not typically something we would use as part of the mooring, but we knew the forecasted winds were going to be pretty high. So Stephen and Glendon were using all their resources and figured, hey, let's put that on and see if it can add a little bit of strength to our mooring system. I've got it marked in red because we would not typically use this chain as part of our normal mooring. Next down from that is the forward spring line, and a spring line is used to go from forward of the vessel to a mooring point aft, or from after the vessel to a mooring point forward. And it's used as a shock absorber to prevent too much fore and aft movement along the berth. The forward spring line is a 1.5-inch braided nylon line, and we know this line was 1 year old. It was changed in January of 2023. Moving aft from that is the aft spring line. This is a 1.5-inch braided nylon. We know this line was probably about 4 months old. We had just changed it relatively recently. Moving aft from that, we have the aft breast line, 1.5-inch braided nylon. We don't know the age of this vessel or of this line. It was in the engine room. We broke it out and we put it into the mooring. We also, though, used a double up for this line, which is a 1.5 inch braided nylon, which was also relatively brand new, about 5 months old as well. And then finally, we have the stern line, which is a 2-inch twisted nylon, so it's got a little bit more strength and braking power to it. We know this line was 2 years old and it's in good condition. I wanted to point out that the aft brush line that I've noted there was also added extra for this particular mooring. It's not normally there. So the 2 lines that are marked in red were additions to our typical mooring. And if you were to subtract those out, I think it's important for the board to know that that would be a typical mooring. And in that typical mooring condition, the crew relates that about a year ago, January 4th, 2023, when the vessel was being turned back over, she was moored in about 70 knots of gust with a standard mooring and withheld those conditions without issue. So that's the end of the information that I have to share with you at this time. I'd like to see if you have any questions that I can try to answer.
I have a couple questions. Was there any damage to the dock or the gangway?
No, sir.
Secondarily, I presume that some of these had to just break off because there were so many mooring lines. Do we know which ones had broken, or did they just become undone during the storm?
They all broke. Every single line that was on the from the vessel to the dock is parted.
Is there a typical, I guess, lifespan for each one of these types of nylon or even the galvanized chain?
So it will certainly depend on the conditions that the lines are used in, how often they're stretched, what their typical loading and unloading is. The conditions that the stern wheeler exists in is fairly dynamic. So I think that their line livelihood is probably shorter than average. But I certainly wouldn't consider 3 years to be too old. I do think that the headline was perhaps too old. If I could wind back time, that would be one of the things I would do is give myself a new 3-inch braided nylon line for that headline. But to answer your question, it would really depend on the conditions in which they're used. And I would admit that the conditions that our lines are used in are probably moderate to high. So I do think that rotating our lines is something that we need to be more mindful of in the future. And that said, we're fairly well acquainted with lines parting. It's not an unusual thing for any vessel to have a line go out, and as soon as it does, you just note it, you get out there and you replace it the way our crew has typically done.
Right. You had one eyewitness. Was there outreach to other eyewitnesses or anyone else? Are we aware of anyone else that saw it floating down towards the locks?
I'm sure there are folks who saw it. She's pretty obvious and it's pretty obvious she was not floating in the way that she should have. But I haven't heard of any of those eyewitnesses. I would certainly love to talk to them. I think each one of them would have a perspective that would be valuable for us in terms of trying to piece this incident together. But if they are, I would encourage them to please contact the port, and we'll try to see if we can get an interview scheduled and try to learn what we can from those eyewitnesses.
Right. This isn't a question, but I do want to extend a huge amount of gratitude and thanks to Captain Tom, to George, to Stephen, the entire crew, as well as to the fire department and everyone that was involved. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for jumping into action so fast. It sounds like it could have been even worse without the immediacy that they took to this job. So I want to say thank you to them.
Yes, sir. I echo that. If it weren't for their heroic performance, we definitely would have been worse off.
I have a comment or question, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory at all. Going back to the lifespan of these ropes and chains, it's hard for me to believe that there's not like a security line. Like even in climbing gear, you have 7 years to give up your climbing gear and get new ones or replace it or whatever. Is this something that you can do going forward? I mean, is this part of what you can make better in the future, is to put inspections for these ropes and change them as needed, or put a lifeline date on them?
Oh, yes, ma'am, absolutely. So, you know, I do want to say that it's the crew makes frequent inspections of these lines. They handle them every time we get the vessel underway. Every time the crew members go across the gangway, they're checking the lines and looking to see their condition. We suffer parting lines from time to time, either from passing vessels or from just winds and seas. That's really how the system is supposed to work. These are also supposed to be early warnings for you that you're in conditions that you might want to double up or triple up. And as you can see, we've got a triple up condition here. It would not be unusual for 1 or 2 of the lines to part given a sustained gale wind, and for us to, you know, get additional lines on there. But I think your point is, what is your life cycle? What is our life cycle management for those lines? And I think it's something that we are going to be spending more attention on and produce more policy and make sure that we have better records and a better sunsetting process for some of our older lines.
Thank you for that. And thank you for even saying that you had double up standards, or, you know, whatever, depending on the state of the river or whatever. I didn't know that you tripled up for, I mean, we were, I think, in conversation with a lot of people who were wondering, well, what did they do to prepare for this? But you did do something.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I mentioned, we had some notice that we had some weather coming in. The whole crew came in on the 12th because we knew that the winds were going to shift from westerlies to easterlies, and she just rides a lot better with the bow into the wind. So knowing that was going to happen, we took our window of opportunity, got the vessel underway, got her back alongside, but with the bow pointed easterly, so that when the wind did shift around, we would be in a much more favorable orientation for that. And at that point is when the deck crew made the decision to add additional lines to the mooring system.
Thank you for that. And I echo Albert's response to thanking everyone involved for the recovery of our beloved sternwheeler, and Tom, Captain Tom, for doing an amazing job in safety and keeping George with them. I was so worried about them being on for so long. I kept telling Jeremiah, get them off the boat, but they wanted to be there. So I'm grateful to everyone that participated.
Yeah. As I mentioned, we would typically try to sail with at least 3 crew members, the engineer. We just didn't have an opportunity to wait for Stephen. We would have preferred to. The mooring at the sternwheeler dock, were Tom able to get alongside, would have been heavily complicated by having only George to help tie the vessel up. And I don't say that as any slight on George's training and capabilities. It's just it's a lot of work for one person to moor the vessel in favorable conditions. And we would not want to have, if we could avoid it, have one person on deck for mooring. So I think in the end, Tom used his decades of experience to make a very crucial risk management decision and made the exact right call that the vessel could not be brought along safely and to proceed down to the locks.
Thank you, Jim, for your presentation. I do have just some side questions. Do you know what the depth of the boat is in the water when it's empty like that, and also what the depth of the locks channel is?
The vessel draws about 5 feet. The draft marks are indicated fore and aft. I am not positive what the draft is right under the bridge. I haven't looked at it that closely, but it's at least, I would have to say it's at least 12 feet deep and probably deeper than that. Yeah.
Okay, and then I was out there today. I was also there in the morning when the boat was in the locks, but I flew the drone out today to get some aerials of the damage on the bridge. So I'll email those over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. If it's, I was just going to ask if you have your drone out, if at any point you're able to take her along the port or the outboard side of the vessel the way she's moored now, I would be very interested in being able to see what the condition looks like on that side of the vessel.
Okay, yeah, once the storm passes over, I'll do a 360 around the boat.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have a couple more questions, but I don't want to take all of the questions. Brad or Carrie, do you all have anything else?
I do not.
Okay. How long does it take to turn the boat around?
That probably depends on the conditions as well, but I think it can be done. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it can be done in a half hour.
Okay. The reason I ask is because obviously we're dealing with a lot of similar, if not worse, weather with this ice storm that is coming upon us. And from a lot of things that we've seen through all sorts of various weather stations and NOAA and all of them, we're going to see very similar, if not worse, winds going east and then west and then east again and vice versa. So I don't know if the boat has moved. I was there. I drove past it yesterday and I still saw it at the docks. Is it still at the docks? Do we need to worry about this again?
Well, I think we need to be very aware of what the winds are going to do, Commissioner. And I think that having gone through this experience, that lesson is even more firmly reinforced with every crew member. We are watching it closely, and if it becomes if it looks like we need to get the vessel away from the dock here and move her downriver, that's something that we've talked about as part of the kind of the after action lesson of this is, all right, well, we need to be like presenting that as one of our primary options and you know, just making sure that we consider that as a, you know, one of the cards in our deck. That mooring down there at Bonneville is very well protected from an east wind. West wind might be a little more challenging because there isn't a lot between us and open water, and it's really not as herky of a mooring as the one that the port has here in town. So our best option, if we can do it safely, is to be here in Cascade Locks. If we can't do it and it's an east wind, I think we need to get down to that mooring down below the locks. And if it's going to be a west wind, I think that's something that Tom and I and the rest of the crew need to talk about and figure out how we mitigate it.
Okay. So that sounds like that's the plan, obviously, for this immediate storm that is upon us literally right now. what is a long-term plan, knowing that there's damage and Coast Guard needs to inspect and all of that? What does the next month look like, I guess?
That's a great question. I have to be frank with you. I have really been focused on how do we get through the next hour. Just as early as today, I can start thinking about, okay, how do we get through the week? I think we need to look at what do we have to do between now and when we go to the shipyard in March, and then how do we make sure that the vessel stays safe? So, Commissioner, I don't have a solid answer for you at this point. Basically have spent most of my energy just trying to figure out what happened and then learn from that going forward.
Okay. I guess a similar question, and this is probably more for Jeremiah, but what about that pedestrian bridge? Is it safe to cross? Do we have that blocked off? How can we move that back into place?
Yeah, so we had our maintenance department put a fence up in front of it and taped it off with caution tape. I had David McCurry out on Monday. When he took a look at the pictures, he felt pretty good about it. When we actually got here and we were able to do a visual inspection on it, and I'll actually send you guys his report. I got it a few hours ago, so we'll get it into your emails sometime this evening. But the location on the underside of the bridge where the boat was rubbing, you can see from initial pictures that the actual strike against the bridge is more like a bump. It doesn't bend in the stanchion on the boat, and it really doesn't do any damage to the bridge. But as that current continues to push the boat into the bridge, it starts to wear away at the bridge, and there's a large chunk of concrete that's missing out of the bottom. From David's perspective, we need to get a closer assessment. That would likely mean getting a boat down there to look at it from underneath, or Robin is trusty drone again, maybe. We'll have to put him on staff to get a good look at whether or not that rebar broke. If the rebar didn't break, then there's ability to patch that. That won't extend the life of the bridge at all, but could help us get back on track. Again, it's going to need a little bit more assessment. David certainly said we shouldn't have people on the bridge. If we could do that patchwork, then it would be bringing a crane in to move it back to center. It's definitely off of its bearings. So there's still more work to be done there. And that's a pretty critical bridge for us. A number of our events are reliant on that bridge. So it's next steps for sure.
Okay. Going back to the boat, are you obviously you just mentioned the wheel itself was underneath. Are we able to share any of the damage and kind of what we're looking at?
Commissioner, we have a little bit of work to go to get a really comprehensive assessment. Just by looking at what we can see and walking around the vessel, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're extremely fortunate that we're probably dealing with superstructure metal and really not even structural repairs, but more or less cut out bent metal, tack weld in new metal, and then welded into place and prep and prime and paint it. All of that in the superstructure, which is not structural to the vessel. But before we say that, we're having a marine surveyor visit the vessel and provide us with a report so that we have a better sense of what the damage is and how much it might cost to repair.
Any commissioners have any more questions?
I'll probably have a million more in the coming days. I'm sure you guys can tell I have a lot of them. but I'm okay right now.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Jim, thank you for the update, and we'll be looking forward to hearing more about plans moving forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, and thank you to the commission for allowing me to appear before you today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Probably, and Genevieve, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, probably an opportune time to talk about some of the investigation the port's going to do, and sort of what our steps are going forward, sort of along in line with what Jetty Light's currently doing. I know you've done work through them before with the Port of Cascade Lot or Port of Hood River, so I'll go ahead and let you.
Well, the first thing to do is to capture information before it's forgotten. And so Parker Nelson has already begun distributing the marine incident reporting forms to all of the eyewitnesses that we're aware of, at least on port staff. This is, amongst the work that he's doing also to prepare for this ice storm tonight. So he is a very busy person. But we'll be collecting all of those incident reports from everybody and compiling that. We'll be paying attention to the Coast Guard inspection information that comes and all of the information that Jetty Light is sharing with the Coast Guard, and that will inform that. One of the first things that we need to do tomorrow really is establish the root cause analysis team. This is usually a team comprised of 3 to 4 or 5 individuals, really is the max. Should include folks that were there that day and folks that were not there that day to ensure, really sort of clear-headed analysis. And so we'd like to recommend that we establish that team tomorrow and establish a lead member of that team to move the root cause analysis forward. I expect that process, depending on the timeline of the outside investigative work, the internal root cause analysis work could maybe take 2 to 3 weeks if we move along swiftly and are able to gather all the information that we need as quickly as we need to. So the first job is to establish that root cause analysis evaluation team, and then begin to collect those incident reports and organize the information by the end of this week.
Fantastic.
Typically, if we were to put a committee together, we would bring that to the commission with a charge, be able to explain, because we're sort of on short time here and moving quickly. I might encourage the commission to make a motion to appoint a couple of commissioners to that team, if there's anybody who's of interest. But it would need to be something where the commission appointed 1 or 2 of the commissioners to be a part of that. Again, typically we put a charge together, we bring that to the commission, there'd be more to sort of explain and do formally. But as we look to move quickly here, it may be something we'd be interested in doing now if a commissioner would be interested in making that motion.
And potentially a couple volunteers from the commission who wish to be part of that as well.
Yeah, if there's any commissioners that would like to be a part of the root cause analysis, it'd be great. It'd be great to have you aboard. If not, it's something staff can absolutely take on ourselves. But
I'm happy to be a part of that.
Anyone else?
I can help as well.
Great. Thank you, commissioners.
We have 2
Thank you
commissioners.
both, because I don't have the time.
Thank you. Could we get a motion to appoint those to beings that they're
Part of it as
representing
well,
the commission on there? Can we get a motion?
I motion to appoint Albert Nansen, Robert Peterson to the investigation of the Sternwheeler incident.
I'll
We have a
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Albert Nance and Robert Peterson as part of the root cause analysis team. Any more questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, commissioners. We'll be reaching out to you in the next couple of days as that committee starts to come together and we start to put new additional members on that committee.
Okay. So moving forward to the consent agenda. As soon as I put my glasses on. Approval
I
of
move for
minutes.
Brad to put his glasses on.
Okay, perfect. Consent agenda. Approval of minutes for commission meeting from November 21st, 2023, December 5th, 2023, and December 19th, 2023. Ratification in the bills in the amount of $426,548.06. Approval of payroll for December 2023 of $63,337.44. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the full consent agenda as is.
I'll second that motion as stated.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Business action items. Approved training session for Morgan CPS Group. 3,000 plus travel expenses not to exceed $3,500.
At the September 5th, 2023 commission meeting, President Lorraine recommended that the commission receive training from Morgan CPS Group on community development. We got a general consensus from the commission that that's something you guys would be interested in looking at. We reached out to John Morgan and got a quote on that for $3,000, including travel expenses, which is what you see in the packet. It's to provide basic understanding of planning in the context of the Oregon planning system and how it operates and how the city works within this frame. This guides the commission through the code and the city process, highlighting where the post-development activities will acquire application to the city and how to best work through those. It was our intention to make this training available to anybody who was interested. This would include folks on the planning commission. This would include city councilors. This would also include community members at large that wanted to take a more active role in the planning process. So we have gone and received that quote from John Morgan. We do have some training funds that are available for it. Obviously, I didn't budget for this specific item, but we have pulled back on the number of folks that we send to SDAO training. We also won't be doing the trip to Washington, D.C. this year. So there is money underneath the training budget line that can be spent on this. So if it's something that the commission is interested in entertaining, we would need a motion for it. And Brad, if you have anything else you wanted to say on it.
I've known John Morgan for sorry about that. I've known John Morgan for a number of years, probably going on 20 years, and it's excellent. Also an excellent trainer. We had a Mark Knudsen from SDAO confirmed that he's been in the training through the training session as well, and that it was excellent. I think this is a great way for kind of the plan moving forward, for him to be able to help explain to us how planning can be used to do some of the major things that we want to do in our strategic business plan, and kind of a way of uniting the port and the city and everybody to understanding what their different roles are and how they dovetail together, and how to better work together, and using planning to help utilize what we have in mind.
Where will this take place?
I'm guessing probably in the pavilion.
And
yeah, we have not secured a location for it. We did not really dive into the details of where the location would be, just because I couldn't write a check yet without you guys approving this. So just that he was available to do it in mid-March at some point in time, and it's somewhere in Cascade Locks. But
right, no, I saw that it said not to exceed, and it wasn't very much of an additional budget. So I presume that it was either nearby or very few people were going to go. Right, if it's going to be nearby.
Yeah, he's coming to us.
Yeah, it's kind of the thinking that it could be held, the pavilion being the most logical place where there's enough room. And as I said, pretty much anybody who wants to come and be part of that benefit from it.
So open to the public.
Yes, and also we've already kind of touched base with members of the city council and kind of confirmed that kind of mid-March was a good would be a good time when everybody could probably attend.
Okay.
We haven't
Thank you.
locked down a specific date yet, but we'll let you know on that. Probably definitely be a Saturday.
I support this. Albert answered my questions, so, or asked my questions and got them answered, so I appreciate it.
Think we need a motion.
Yeah,
We have a
I
motion.
make a motion to approve the training session with Morgan CPS Group for $3,000 plus travel expenses not to exceed $3,500.
And to confirm, sorry, before the vote, we do have these funds already allotted within the budget. They just weren't specifically for this.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Was that a second, or do we have a second?
I was just getting some clarification. I just wanted to make sure things were on budget.
Okay.
But I will second it. Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the training session with Morgan CPS. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Okay, executive director's report.
Typically, my executive director's report gets written over the weekend, but I had a busy one full of other activities. So I've tried to jot down some notes here as best I could. It's been a bit of a blur, just not this weekend, but just in general with preparing for the weather. Our maintenance department, kudos to them for the plowing that they've done. I just got a text from Parker not 20 minutes ago that he was walking around Flex 6, checking the faucets, seeing what was frozen. Kudos to the maintenance department. All of the port-owned buildings up until this point haven't experienced any freezes or cracked lines. I won't say freezes. We have lost water out at the visitor center building. We just recently buried that line though, so we feel a lot better about it freezing because it used to run up above the roof in the visitor center. Even if it were to break, we wouldn't see the sort of damage that we would have just a few months ago before the maintenance department did that. So we're happy for that. I did have a busy week last week. Had an opportunity to work very closely with one of the port's newest employees, Genevieve Scholl. We're happy to have her on as the deputy director. One of the things that I've been very lucky with as I start to put a leadership team here together with the addition of Genevieve and Parker is one of the things that's always really difficult about hiring for a port is finding somebody with port experience. That onboarding process can take, I mean, for just to onboard me, it took me probably a year and a half before I really understood what a port did, what we were responsible for, how our mission aligned with our daily activities, the different things that we can get into. I still learn, every week I learn something new. And Genevieve has encouraged me to understand that it's going to go that way for a long time. That's just the nature of working for a port. But it's been very beneficial both with Parker and with Genevieve to bring people on that immediately speak the language, understand the problems, understand the mission, and can jump right in and be helpful. We did spend the last 2 weeks really tackling old business, not as much new business. We've been short-staffed for a while in those positions. Parker's for a long while, and then Brittany for not near as long, but the amount of workload that Brittany had was pretty substantial. Genevieve has jumped right in, got her hands dirty, and has immediately started making an impact. So we're certainly happy to have her here. She may even speak up here in just a bit on some of the grant management work that she was doing. At one point in time, that fell across 3 different employees. Genevieve has stepped in and taken that on herself. So right away, we're ahead. She no longer can say she's the newest port employee, though, because we'd also like to congratulate Cheyenne Hoyker, who has taken a position as a toll taker up in the booth. So we welcome her to the port family and look forward to seeing her up there greeting and toll taking. met with David McCurry on Monday to take a look at the bridge, as I said, but also had an opportunity to meet with him on Friday. We're taking a really strong look at the 15-year maintenance plan for the bridge and looking at reassessing that, rewriting it, making some adjustments to it, and hopefully having that ready to present to the commission at the strategic business plan. It's been a while since it's been updated. We do look at it and approve it every year. But I think with sort of the direction that this commission has talked about with the bridge, including the $12 million ask that we're looking at from both sides of the states, that we need to take a hard look at that 15-year plan for the bridge and make some adjustments. So me and David are tackling that. We brought along Dan Marr as well. He was eager just to get more education on the bridge, and then Genevieve has sat in on just about everything for the last 2 weeks, just soaking it all in. Small update on Ixtapa. It's looking like March that we will have them. They have submitted their architectural plans to the county. They have made they're in the process of making the electrical update, so that continues to move forward. So we're happy about that. McCurry, year plan. We did get some information on Friday, and you heard Jim make mention of it, the middle of March for the repower. We were gearing towards the middle of February for that. We found out from the manufacturers of the CAT engines. So this is the CAT factory down in Georgia, not the actual dealer itself, which is located out of Portland. But the factory itself saying that they are behind, and that the soonest we'll get those, not the soonest we'll get those, they commit to having those to us in the middle of March. We were told at one time that, hey, they're ahead of schedule. We think we'll have them to you in early January. So we kind of started logistically putting plans together for that. And then it became, well, no, we're going to be in line with the end of January. So we kind of started putting in logistics for that. Obviously, the new issues with the stern wheeler also have to be worked in logistically. March might actually work out really well as far as us getting through anything we need to do with the Coast Guard, getting in there and doing all the repairs at once. So as Jim said, that's still in development, but we do expect to see engines on the dry dock at JT Marina in the middle of March. Some more information to come on those. I apologize for not having a report for that. We did find out end of day Friday, so that's sort of new information that we were working with. Be happy to answer any questions if any of the commissioners have any. Also, we'll give Genevieve an opportunity to talk about the work she's been doing this week, some of the things that she's learned, and just sort of what her experience has been for the last couple of weeks.
All right, take it away, Genevieve.
All right. Well, thank you to all the commissioners and Jeremiah and everybody for welcoming me to the team. I do come from about a decade of ports experience, and I love ports. There's never a dull moment. And part of the reason that I love ports so much is because the teams do become family very quickly. And it was really an honor over this past weekend to watch the cool and brave heads prevail in a crisis moment. Really, truly very impressed by everybody on the team on how they handled this crisis, and at the same time kept on top of all of the port's responsibilities in the inclement weather situation, and that continues to tonight. Just very, very impressed with the team, and really proud and happy to be a part of it. I'll give you just a quick update, really kind of a grants report update, starting with the Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund grant, which we refer to as the ARPA grant. That's the $1.3 million that was directed our way from Senator Chuck Thompson. We filed our quarterly report on time before yesterday. That grant will have one more quarterly report in April. The funds remaining to expend for that grant are at about $650,000. Those funds need to be expended in June, by the end of June, and all of the paperwork wrapped up by the end of October. The delayed delivery, as Jeremiah mentioned, of the engines for the stern wheeler are putting a bit of a time crunch on that project. It's a little bit disheartening that we didn't hear about the delay before the 1st of December, at which time the window to request a 6-month extension was closed. So we really are going to be watching the progress of that pretty closely. The grant also covers the bathrooms at the Harvey Road parking lot for the Cascade Locks Trail and some of the remaining work on that trail connections. So I'm putting those pieces together. We had 2 other grants for the Trails Project, a local government grant pool, and the Recreational Trails Program grant. Those are both state grants. Looks like we missed a report in September, so I'm catching us up on that. And we had an approved grant that was just missing some documentation in order to be able to be concluded and to move forward with the funding of that. So Dan Marr did a great job picking those loose threads up and getting that done. This week, we are working to assist MCED in their assistance for the City of Cascade Locks Economic Development Agency grant for the power station project. They have an update due that requires some economic job impact data. So we are very thankfully getting quick response from all of our port tenant buildings, tenants in our port-owned buildings in the business park that are providing jobs data that MCED will need to submit that project up, the EDA project update by Friday for the city. So really very busy, and I've begun to start to build our target list. It's very fortuitous to come in at this time as you begin the process of your strategic business planning process. Most of the grant programs that we'll be targeting in the next 1 to 3 years will be specifically dependent on the identification of projects in your plan. And so the plan should come first. The timeline and prioritization of projects, capital improvement projects, other projects, community improvement projects, the plan should come first and then inform the grant pursuit plan. And so it's really great that we're beginning that this month, and I'm really excited to be a part of that as well. So thanks again, everybody. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks, Genevieve. Does anybody have any questions for Genevieve? I want to take a quick opportunity to thank Caden Pond and Jim for their efforts on the Sternwheeler, being here tonight, keeping me in the loop, educating me as we move through. I also want to take an opportunity to thank one of the unsung heroes of the rescue of the Sternwheeler. That's Stephen Hamrick. He actually boarded the vessel on the locks down at the Bonneville Dams. He also spent 36 hours on that boat, was unable to reach his wife over that time. He lost power at his house. They had pipes break. So a big round of applause and thank you to Stephen, who did also put in a tremendous effort to get that boat back up here. So thank you to everyone involved. And Chief Logan, thank you for being here tonight. I know we didn't wind up asking any questions, and I know you pretty well, so I'm glad I bet you're probably glad we didn't, but thank you for coming tonight.
I will say that I got my daughter actually complimented Genevieve on her how well she handled the press and everything with this incident with the Sternwheeler. She says, "Boy, whoever you got handling all your PR and stuff for your and social media is doing a great job of getting the information out there." So that was kind of neat. She's up in Seattle, and I just told her about it, and she says, "Wow, that was, a nice compliment from her."
I contacted Genevieve at 8:45, basically said, "We're going to work." And she had that out lickety split. She did all the communications for the Port of Hood River. It is definitely a skill set that we will take advantage of here at the Port of Cascade Locks. Great job, Susie.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. I'll just, let's start with Pam, because she's first in my list here on the computer screen.
Thank you. I was kind of hoping to go last so we can capture everybody. Yeah, there's so many people to thank. Captain Tom, George, Stephen, those, they deserve some major accolades. They did a major service for us. and for the community, because we all love that boat. Jeremiah for being on the spot, and Genevieve, I do agree that communication was well done, and I'm so glad you're with us. Maybe you can give Jeremiah a little break in a couple of months whenever you get caught up. I know he probably needs it. Rob was on site. Thank you, Rob. Everybody that participated, people that I don't even know, like the Hood River Sheriff's Department, of course, John with the EMS and fire chief, Coast Guard, Jim for coming in and giving us the update and asking tough questions. I know this is not easy for anyone to navigate as far as how we move forward. So thank you. And Albert had great questions. I'm also very thankful for Thunder Island Brewing for supporting the lack of power, and EMS John again to the rescue there. So that was really good stuff. Rob was on the scene all day there too. So thank you again, Rob, and Mayor Fallon and other people that brought stuff to keep people fed and have warmth, because it got awfully cold in everyone's house. So if I forgot anyone, I'm just going to piggyback on what I forgot. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. It was a hard weekend, and we probably have a couple more days of it being difficult. So thanks in advance.
All right. Thank you. Carrie Clute.
I think Pam took most of the words out of my mouth. I really just want to thank everybody as well for handling the incident with the stern wheeler the way they did. It could have been so much worse. I think that we need to consider doing some kind of formal recognition, if possible, plaque or something to really, or medals, like give these guys a medal for their work on the stern wheeler and saving our boat and risking their lives. I mean, frankly, I saw the video that Rob took and saw the boat rocking out there in the river while they were, and that looked scary. So so much props over to Captain Tom and George for navigating that, and to Stephen for jumping on and spending time on the boat to make sure it was safe. Also want to thank Genevieve for joining our team and diving in and just taking the bull by the horns, like, you've got this, and we are so thankful and lucky to have you. And that's all I've got. Brad, you're on mute.
There you go. Moving on. Albert Nance.
Thank you all. To echo everyone's comments, once again, thank you to Captain Tom and to George and to Stephen, to the entire crew. I sent a couple of texts actually to George and just let him know what a local hero you all are and have been for the community, thanks to all of your hard work and just jumping into it. So once again, you all are local heroes, and I really, really appreciate everything you all did over the weekend. So thank you very much. Also, it's been a long time since we've met, so I want to tell everyone Happy New Year. We didn't meet January 2nd. That also happened to be the day that Genevieve started. So welcome aboard, Genevieve. I also want to say, yeah, of course. I also want to say welcome to Cheyenne. I definitely have some questions as far as the those ARPA funds that you mentioned that expire in June. I know that there's a lot of things that we can do with that money. The strategic plan is coming up. Obviously, there's a lot of things that will come out of that, so I'm looking forward to that. I do want to note that with the lack of interest that we've had within Flex 6, I think that it's incredibly important that we revisit what we're doing with Flex 6, and it'll come out the strategic business plan. But I think that there's probably stuff that we need to start looking at and thinking about prior to that. It's a big, beautiful building that a lot of us here have been incredibly involved in, have been part of the reason that we're even on this board, or because of Flex 6. It's brand new and it's been collecting far too much dust for far too long. I think we need to revisit that. I think there's plenty of conversation that we can have around it, and I think we can deep dive into that very much on during our strategic business plan. But I think it's something that we need to definitely keep top of mind. And other than that, I just want to say thanks to Jim for the presentation. Once again, thanks to everyone that helped out with the boat. And stay safe, stay warm. And yeah, thanks to Thunder Island as well, and to Rob for all their help and support for the community. That definitely does not go unnoticed. So I want to thank you all again.
Absolutely. Mr. Peterson, are you available?
I am here. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm actually sitting here at Thunder Island Brewing, ready to open the warming center in case we have a power edge. So I want to say, first of all, thank you to Tom, George, Stephen, Landon, and the rest of the crew for your immediate actions for saving the sternwheeler. It's been in the news on a couple of channels. I've been contacted for my footage. So I don't think it's just Cascade Locks that noticed, but you guys really saved the day and making things come to a good ending and no lives lost. Also, I appreciate Jim and Caden, your urgency and call to action and putting in those extra hours to make sure that we, figure out what happened, how to prevent this in the future and have better policies in place. And also Jeremiah and Genevieve and Parker, for just the countless hours you've done for the last week or so. It's just been one event after the other. We had a citywide power outage. We set a record of 17 hours for that. So I appreciate you being available during these times, and also to the maintenance staff. Todd and Alfonso has been plowing the roads to make it accessible. It helped out Gorge Canoe Club a lot to get supplies for the warming center, so thank you for that. Also, as regarding the warming center, a thanks to other locals like the mayor, Councilor Denise, Chief John Logan, volunteer Josh Baker, and the rest of their crew for helping out. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. One recommendation I would suggest, because of this kind of freak weather event, either the city or the port should look into installing generator power inlets to buildings that could serve as a warming center. A lot of these heavy duty generators can be rented from the Dalles or some other places, and all you need is the inlet hookup installed on the side of the building. So there's some reliable place to do shelters and such. So something I would look into as a new project this year, and possibly budget for. As far as that, I hope everyone gets caught up on their rest and stay safe for the storm that's coming in tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Boy, I love going last because, I don't have to spend a lot of time pontificating like in the past. All I have to say is ditto. And yeah, kudos to all of the volunteers, all of the great heroes that have kept our sternwheeler safe, for Jim and Caden, and new people got on staff. We got a great year coming ahead. The strategic business plan, I think, is going to be fantastic. I think we're really headed in a great direction. Also, I think I might have even texted Jeremiah with that idea of adding, whether it's auxiliary power or something to the pavilion, so that perhaps we could use that for a warming shelter in the future. The fact that Thunder Island stepped up was incredible. That was a great event, and thank you, Rob and Denise and Josh, everybody that stayed at the warming shelter and kept it open till late at night. That was really great, and that was just a great community event. Even if it wasn't freezing cold and people were there to keep from freezing to death, it was just great to have people in the community kind of get together. I got to meet some more new people in the community and kind of say hi and tell them what we're doing at the port, and welcome to the community, and got to touch base with some people. We got some people in town that have incredible skills. I met a lady that was previously a planner for the city of Indianapolis, and I encouraged her to get on to the charter review committee, and miraculously she already had the application. So I was able to just kind of hopefully push her over to the edge to get her to do it. But like I said, we got a great community building here, a lot of new energy, a lot of great volunteers, and I'm really hopeful for the way everything's going. And we've really assembled a fantastic team at the port, with new people coming on and everything. So I couldn't be happier, and I can just say ditto to everything that my fellow commissioners already said. So looking forward to a great year, and everybody stay warm, stay healthy, don't fall down in the snow or the ice.
I'm going to round out our thank yous here. It was really a Herculean effort, so we want to thank the Columbia River Intertribal Fisheries for their help with the sternwheeler, as well as the Bonneville Dam Rangers. They were very helpful. This was on a holiday weekend. Most of that place was locked up. There was also snow on the ground. They were very helpful. Bonneville Dam lock operator. That was my first trip down to the locks, and I got to be in the operator's booth and hang out with him for 45 minutes. And he was very helpful and understanding through the process. The U.S. Coast Guard Columbia River Sector immediately came to aid and was helpful in this process, as well as the Army Corps Engineers, Portland District. And then a special shout out to Dennis Snyder, who was also one of the first responders here, and who we had to encourage not to get on that boat. If there hadn't been 4 or 5 people saying, "No, Dennis, I don't think we want you on the boat," he would have definitely got on there. "Oh, I've been a deckhand," he said, "I can do this." We all know Dennis, and there's not much he can't do. So thank you to Dennis for his help during this process as well. It was a Herculean effort.
Yes. Well, if there's nothing else to come before the commission, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
I
motion
make a
to adjourn.
motion. Go ahead, Carrie.
I make a motion to adjourn.
And
I'll
Albert, you
second
were
the
gonna
motion.
second that? Oh, who was that?
I
Rob,
will second that
Rob,
motion
okay,
to
and Rob
adjourn.
seconds the motion, okay. It's been motioned and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody
Stay
opposed?
warm. I just got
All right.
a phone call. The school's canceled tomorrow, so more kids to hang out with.
All right.
All right, see you, everybody.
Stay
See
safe
you.
and warm,
See you soon.
everyone.
Thanks.
All righty. Thank you much.